Welcome to the Get to the Root podcast, where we build your health from the ground up. At Root Functional Medicine, we're on a mission to bring sustainable and validated functional medicine to the world. As a team of doctors and dietitians, we are dedicated to treating gut health, hormones, autoimmune conditions, and metabolic health at the root cause through advanced testing, food as medicine, and telehealth programs. For years, we've been helping people get to the root of their health concerns. Now, we're here to share our knowledge so you can benefit too. Stay tuned and join us as we get to the root.
Hello and welcome to our very first episode of the Get to the Root podcast. I'm Dr. Erica Armstrong, your host, and today we're going to be talking about the topic, what is functional medicine? I'm here today with Root's lead physician, Dr. Emily Cortez, who is a functional medicine certified DO. She's board certified in internal medicine, and she transitioned from practicing conventional med peds to practicing functional medicine, and we'll get to hear about her story today. Our mission at Root is to bring validated and sustainable functional medicine to the world. This episode matters because of the huge growing interest in functional medicine across both patients or people and healthcare practitioners, and its transformative potential in disrupting healthcare and providing better outcomes than people have been able to achieve with conventional medicine alone. So today we're going to explain what functional medicine is, how it's different, and why it works. So welcome, Dr. Emily. Would you mind kind of sharing your personal experience and how you transitioned from conventional medicine to functional medicine?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on today. My story on how I transitioned from more of a conventional model into functional. So I was thinking about this, and it sort of goes back to even when I was training in residency. So I trained in both internal medicine and pediatrics, and especially on the adult internal medicine side, you see a lot of acute care, a lot of hospital patients, critical care, and I noticed a trend after a couple of years of training. I was like, some of this stuff is preventable in some ways. And it took getting into the hospital to put the pieces of the puzzle together for people. And I thought that's fascinating, first of all, just from an academic perspective. But it really is somewhat of a disservice to individuals that it takes a disease process getting sort of that bad before someone figures it out. And so, I left residency and I thought, well, primary care is definitely the route I want to go. And I want to prevent people landing up in the hospital and feeling pretty horrible. And I quickly realized that primary care, although the intent is prevention and really figuring out like why people are suffering, currently in our system just isn't addressing that. So I started looking into what further education can I get to serve the needs of our population better. And there are various different schools of thought about this, right? Especially in the United States, we've got the preventative medicine route, we've got more of a lifestyle medicine route, and then functional medicine. And so I sort of looked at all three of those, and I found that functional medicine was the only structure of thinking that actually took the individual and said, what does their day-to-day look like that is impacting their health? I found that the other ways of thinking about prevention of chronic disease or reversal was more population-based. Mm-hmm. And that's great. We want good population health, but I think that forsakes the individual. And I really valued that relationship between individual people that are hurting and how doctors can help. So I felt like functional medicine was the right avenue to address that. So I started that training and then actually ended up at Root years ago.
So fun fact, Dr. Emily was our first full-time Root physician.
Yeah. And ever since, I think functional medicine ultimately does address a population need, right? We're looking at what is the root of chronic problems and some acute, honestly. So what is the root cause of the problem of why someone is having symptoms and how can we reverse it? But it really does value that individual relationship of figuring out one-on-one, how does your day-to-day affect how you're feeling? Yeah, that's long-winded, but that's my journey.
No, I love how you compared it to those other options, which are still great options out there. Preventative, there's integrative, lifestyle, and functional medicine. Like you said, the individual. And really, you need this type of model of care because when you're really thinking about the individual, not only like day-to-day life, but their biochemistry, their microbiome, you need to have the time and space to actually do that advanced testing and dig really deep for that person as an individual, as an N of one. So our stories are somewhat similar. I was a practicing family medicine physician for about 8 years. And over the years, you feel like you're doing all the right things that you were taught, right? You were checking the right boxes. You were prescribing the right medications, and the numbers might even budge, right? But the people didn't actually feel well. And this kept happening to me. And I noticed this pattern of people were feeling unwell. Sometimes they didn't have a diagnosis, but they had things like fatigue was a big one, bloating, and bowel changes, skin rashes. And something just wasn't sitting right. They didn't feel like themselves. And I didn't have the answers, but I know that these people were not making this up. I believed them. And actually, I was at a medical school event. We were at a reunion, and my good friend, who was also a family medicine doctor, said, Erica, the type of medicine that you are talking about wanting to practice, that actually exists. And we have a program here at the Cleveland Clinic. And I think you should look into it. And I was fascinated right away. I actually signed up for a conference the next month, and I never looked back. I tried to piece this in on top of a heavily burdened conventional model where I was seeing 20 to 25 people a day, and I had about 8 minutes, and then I had to chart in between and answer messages, and acute things were coming up. And you just had this huge scope of practice. And I painstakingly tried to do this for a year. And before I decided, okay, this model of care does work, people are getting improvements, I want to do this full time. Like, this is the type of medicine I want to practice. And to do that, I've got to start it from scratch. And we started as this small functional medicine practice here in Grand Rapids. Nobody knew what functional medicine was at the time. That's a huge shift now. Love to see it. And we just started building, and the outcomes spoke for themselves, and it grew by word of mouth. And so Root has grown. We're now in 48 states online, and we have several doctors and dietitians who work with us. And so as this popularity of functional medicine grows, in our mission, we want to provide this validated functional medicine. And I think it's important to note that it is ill-defined out there. There are lots of different types of practitioners. And a lot of times people don't really know what to expect in working with a functional medicine doctor. So let's kind of talk about, in our definition, as Dr. Emily, you already mentioned, getting to the root cause, helping people truly feel better, this individual approach, and then also this science-based and systems-based approach where we put this whole picture together, we use advanced testing, and we figure out what is going on actually so that we can reverse it. And so let's take, for example, a typical conventional experience for someone who's having heartburn, aka like an acid reflux. So you go in to see your doc, maybe you're at your annual physical, and they ask you this review of symptoms, and one of them is heartburn, and they notice that, and okay, well, we can take care of that. We've got a pill for that, right? The doctor wants to make you feel better. You need a simple approach that you can do. So you end up with this medication, this class of medications that are called PPIs, or proton pump inhibitors, those things like Nexium and things like that. And so like that works for you. You feel better. So you think, okay, I should probably keep taking this because it's fixing my problem, right? But here is the issue with that approach. Now you're on this medication that you have no idea how long you're going to be on it, or if you should be on it. And this medication has side effects. There are real issues with this. It's been linked to dementia, kidney issues, and no one really took the time to tell you about all of the risks of this medication. But in a functional medicine model of care, we think even deeper. So we think, okay, now you've got artificially low stomach acid. What is that doing to your vitamin absorption? What is that doing downstream just to that first part of your gut, the small intestine, to the microbiome balance there? Could that lead to some overgrowth and bloating and further issues down the road? And then probably the biggest thing is like, wow, we didn't really figure out why you were having acid reflux.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
Like the original reason that your symptom is actually there, right?
right,
And which
right.
is probably what everybody sits in their physician's office and wonders, well, like, why do I even have this in the first place?
Hmm.
And then that's just sort of like steamrolled over sometimes.
Yeah. And so root cause medicine, or like
Mhm.
the essence of functional medicine, there's different ways that you can model that out. One of the ways that I used when I first started practicing was actually an engineering method, and it's called the 5 whys. So
Mhm.
ask why 5 times until you get to the root cause. And so for acid reflux, sometimes it's due to low stomach acid, because that can make the top, it's called the lower esophageal sphincter. It's this little valve that's in the top of your stomach. That low stomach acid can make that kind of loose, not as taut. So then you get more acid reflux. Or maybe it's H. pylori, a bacteria that can grow in the stomach that can eventually cause ulcers, but at a low grade may just be related to some inflammation. Or maybe it's a food sensitivity, like an eosinophilic esophagitis, where maybe it's gluten causing your acid reflux. And if we forget that, and we don't test for, maybe it's celiac, which is a
Right.
severe form of gluten. And now we have totally missed the boat and set you up on covering up your symptoms. And years later, maybe you find out truly you had a gluten allergy.
Mhm.
So I know, Dr. Emily, you probably deal with heartburn, and many of your members. Do you have any particular case that you would want to talk about for this?
Yeah. So reflux is one of our common symptoms that we can pretty quickly get down to that. Like, why is this happening? That's pretty easy, actually, for us. I would call that our bread and butter. But there are, functional medicine, I think, addresses, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of the symptoms of like just not feeling well, right? So not like there's an emergency and something is horribly awful, but you have fatigue, you get tired in the afternoon, just a general like unwell feeling, but you can't really put your finger on it. And I think functional medicine really shines in that world. I think a lot of not feeling great, but then also being told like your labs through your conventional doc are not what they should be. And here are a couple meds for it. So for example, if you're told you have prediabetes and that your cholesterol is just a little higher than it needs to be, right? For a lot of folks, they're put on medications like metformin and a statin. And there is some data to say that that combination for these types of issues decreases the risk of atherosclerosis and heart disease long term. But for, especially younger folks, the question of like, am I going to be on these medications forever? And why did this happen in the first place? I think really sticks in the back of their mind. And functional medicine can address those questions for people. Why did this happen in the first place?
Let's keep going on that. When people are needing things for their metabolism and their insulin, and they're given the most common medications, and the doctor's doing the right thing as part of their training, right? But what it,
check those boxes.
Yeah, in the best interest of the individual's long-term health and that education, like how would we address things like insulin or blood sugar problems or insulin resistance at root?
Yeah. So I will say, even the first time I meet with somebody, I can sort of tell that they have blood sugar imbalance with certain symptoms.
Yeah. What are those symptoms?
Yeah. So a lot of the best, I think, screening question you can ask yourself this is like, if I eat lunch, am I tired an hour or an hour and a half later? So you get to like 1:30, 2:30 in your afternoon, and you're like, I either need coffee or chocolate. And if that's going through your head, I can tell you that your blood sugar is imbalanced.
Yeah, extremely common. And almost 50% of American adults have insulin resistance, right? Yeah.
But other things would be cravings outside of that afternoon. So cravings even when you're like, gosh, I just ate and I'm still hungry, or weight gain that you are doing all kinds of things for, and especially that like abdominal weight gain. Those symptoms really do speak to the development of insulin resistance. So even before I have lab work on somebody, I have a real good inkling of what's going on here. So I do order the labs. I want validated numbers to say, hey, this is where we're at right now for metabolic health. But even before I have those labs back, I want somebody to start working with a registered dietitian on our team, because So I'm really leaning towards, yes, this is a metabolic problem that's really driving those day-to-day symptoms. And the faster we can get on some of those nutrition changes, the better people are feeling and the faster we can reverse that metabolic condition.
Yeah, you brought up a couple of great points about our model at Root. Number one, since the first day at Root, we have always been a doctor and dietitian team.
Yes.
And that is so, so important since nutrition is one of the root causes of many, many of our chronic conditions. And the dietitians are the experts. And so now you've got two people on your team. You've got a medical expert who can really dig deep and interpret that science data with you, make diagnoses if applicable, right? And then you've got a nutrition expert. And when you put those two together, that is a recipe for amazing outcomes. And then I like what you said about probably knowing what's going on, but needing those lab numbers because you actually want to validate this and show people objective evidence of what's going on in their biochemistry, right? And also, like, it's measurable. And so when people start to improve, sometimes the improvements are great, but you forget where you started because you just, that's great that you're feeling so good that you don't even want to remember how you felt before. We see that sometimes at Root. But having those numbers change is powerful. And like you are shifting what is happening in your body through your actions. And that's validating, right? That's validating that you're doing the right thing and that you are changing the course of your health. And you can see it on paper.
Yeah, I always celebrate when people are feeling better right away. And I will say, especially with insulin resistance and blood sugar management, some of those tweaks that our registered dietitians really hone in on for folks, man, people feel better within weeks. But it is so fun to circle back and draw another set of labs and show them that the work that they're putting in day to day, those small changes in what they're eating, how their sleep is, how they're managing stress, that then their numbers look better. And like it's taking somebody and completely, honestly, taking them off of one path in life from a metabolic health perspective and completely rewriting the course of their next 20, 30 years. So it seems like a small transition to see how an insulin level and an A1C normalize, but that changes people's lives for the better long term.
Yes, the most rewarding part of
it really is.
Functional medicine is watching this transformational change that happens. And it's not easy. It's not a pill for every ill, right? It's work. And you know, having the right team behind you is extremely important because it's hard to change on your own, right?
Yeah.
And you know, having the right data up front is also extremely helpful because it can guide, you know, your action steps. So when you know what's actually going on and what needs to be targeted. So talk about who is an ideal person for functional medicine. What kind of people do we help at Root, Emily?
Yeah, you know, I think when you think through like who does best in functional medicine, originally your first thought is somebody who's highly motivated and really wants to know that why. But I actually think anybody can benefit from functional medicine.
Absolutely.
Even if you're at the beginning of like, gosh, I still really want to benefit from more traditional medications because there is a time and a place for them, right? And maybe you're not at that, like, why is this happening perspective, but your symptoms aren't fully addressed. Man, we meet people where they're at. And I think that is so important. I would want to be met where I'm at as far as what my symptoms look like. So I wouldn't hesitate to say you have to be this like highly motivated person with tons of time to like do everything from a functional medicine perspective. As we grow in sort of changing lifestyle, I am always so inspired to see our members take like little nuggets of information and then start to implement them in their daily life. So I think if you're interested in functional medicine in any way, even if you're like, could I eat a little bit healthier, or the little bit of the why in the back of your head, I think that you'd benefit. And yeah.
Yes, I 100% agree that every person can benefit, even if you think your diet is perfect. We do hear that sometimes, right? You know, we work with dietitians, and stay tuned because they'll be on the podcast too. But like, is your diet perfect, but you're eating the same exact thing every day? Or does it change week to week? Are you eating 30 different plants and phytonutrients in different colors for a microbiome? Are you really balancing your blood sugar? Or are you sometimes like needing a piece or two of dark chocolate after, you know, a meal? And I think there is always room for optimization, especially when you use data and say, oh, actually, I do have some nutrient deficiencies, so maybe I could use some support here. And then, so we have people really with all different types of motivations and goals, since we work with both individuals and some of the members at Root are actually sponsored by their employer because they have a thoughtful, innovative employer who really cares about the health of their organization and they want to offer enhanced benefits. So really we have people coming in with different motivations, but we also see a lot of people who they understand that they just don't feel their best, that they don't have a diagnosis. And sometimes I actually feel like that's a hesitation. They wonder, do I need to work with Root because I don't have like a specific diagnosis?
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about the kind of things that we uncover for that individual.
Yeah, I'm glad you're touching upon that. I think that that's an important sector of folks that I work with. And I will say that I think I love that I'm a physician in functional medicine. I really do. I think that having the background of seeing a lot of serious diseases in our training as physicians, but then also knowing the functional medicine side of things, my first thing that when I meet somebody new is like, is there an active diagnosis that we need to make, that I need to search after? And in the medical world, you think of these as like zebras, right? Sort of a rare thing that you find. But I will say at Root, we do occasionally find things that are something that needs to be managed by a good healthcare team. And we become part of that core group of healthcare folks to take care of more rare diagnoses. So in the back of my mind, that's always there. Is that my day-to-day? No, I think a lot of the folks that we see, we uncover a lot of, so like metabolism problems, as we touched upon, we see quite a bit. So insulin resistance, prediabetes, problems with cholesterol levels, hormonal issues as well. So women with sort of just a funky menstrual cycle in various ways. I think that the healthcare community doesn't see the menstrual cycle as a vital sign.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You know, how many times do you actually get asked that by your physician? And the docs here at Root are going to probably spend 10 minutes talking about your cycle as a female. So hormonal issues, including thyroid problems. The amount of thyroid problems we uncover is always, it's always a little bit shocking.
Yeah. Even if they've been told, you know, your TSH is normal. And like, normal means different things to different doctors.
Correct.
A TSH of 4 is not normal. That is a warning sign, red flag. Like something else is going on here. We got to get to the root of it.
Yeah. So thyroid issues sort of leads us down this path of like, is there something else going on from an endocrine perspective, like an adrenal health issue? But then a lot of chronic problems.
That's chronic, low-grade inflammation that's causing brain fog and the forgetfulness that you're just wondering if it's a normal part of aging. It's not.
Right.
Like it's not. Like, let's fix that.
So if you've been told, oh, like you're just getting older, and I think we, even as our crew here at Root, like we've heard that, right? Oh, you're just getting older. And I don't think our age correlates to having symptoms. So even if you haven't had a diagnosis, you know, that someone's written on your chart, you're not feeling well, you can feel better. It's just that simple.
Yes, 100%. So, Emily, you talked about the importance of having that medical background and what that does for you. And it was bringing me back to my primary care days when I didn't have the answers, but I did have a big referral network, right? And you could send people to different specialists, and then they would wait for their appointment, and then they would have a specialist give them a consultation, but then they would end up like right back in your lap, right where they started. And it was like a pattern. And then you would send them to the next specialist. And now you were 4 specialists deep. And you're like, okay, how do I help this person? None of these specialists really gave me a good plan. And now they're back in my lab. And actually, this was one of the things that drove me to functional medicine because I couldn't handle not having an answer for these people. And, you know, I just needed a different thought process and a different model of care. And I really needed to figure out what was causing this chronic inflammation, which, you know, it's usually in the gut. And I needed access to that advanced testing. But that's one of the things that we still see at Root. A lot of our people are coming to us if they have a chronic condition with 4 or 5 different specialists. And like, that's okay. We can support that. But what happens is we end up being kind of, you know, we're not primary care, but because primary care is so busy and burdened, these people are still not having anyone put that whole picture together from a holistic perspective.
Right.
And so we still end up being this key person in their healthcare journey because we are translating some of this information that they're getting and we're making it actionable so that people can actually feel better.
Yeah. When I went into primary care, I wanted to be a quarterback for somebody on their healthcare team. And it's really hard in modern primary care to be someone's quarterback with 7 minutes to see them and put the puzzle together. We just spend a lot of time with folks hearing their story, reviewing medical records so we can sort of put the puzzle together. And usually for folks who do have multiple specialists, they've been given what we in the medical world call like ICD diagnoses, right? So they have a code to bill is really what that means. But I think a functional medicine doctor sort of looks at the list of problems that maybe someone's been told they have, and we're still not at the root with those problems, right? Because the root is really the fact that there is inflammation going on. So I think that we have the skill set to say, yep, like these few things are happening. You have a rheumatologic disease and now you have a skin problem. But really, when we look at those things, we say, oh, it's because you have inflammation. We have to figure out why the inflammation is there. And that is that's really not how various specialists work. But I will say, sometimes we need that whole picture to come together with the specialist so that we as functional medicine doctors can get to the root.
Yes, that is very true. And we rely on our partnerships and specialists for things that are sometimes people do need colonoscopy.
Right.
And sometimes like they do need acute care in their conventional team. And so we are here to support them through all of that and look at this as a long-term health journey and solve problems, but keep them solved and then measure them and be there throughout their life because health is a lifetime journey. So there's a few different ways that people can work with root functional medicine. And one of them is getting access to the right lab testing. This was one of my struggles as a primary doctor was that I didn't have access to microbiome testing, nor would I have known what to do with the results. And also like some of the labs that people wanted were very expensive. And I knew that because I had heard complaints from people after they got their lab bill over and over. And you get a little hesitant to do that to people. You don't want to have your patients have surprise lab bills. So it gets hard to get the right kind of testing and then get the right kind of interpretation. So we offer that at Root where anyone can sign on, join, and get their labs, both extensive conventional panels at our lab partners nationwide and functional test kits that they can do at home. And then the Root team will write comments based on our years of functional experience and supportive resources will come along with that. And then if people want to, they can work one-on-one with us, if they do need more support. And so that is for both individuals nationwide and for employers who typically will work with us for either wellness programming or chronic disease management. So to find out more about Root, just head to our website, rootfunctionalmedicine.com. You can see options for individuals, for lab testing, for employers on our website. And make sure to follow us on our social channels at Root Functional Medicine. We are active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And stay tuned for our upcoming podcast. Thanks, Dr. Emily. Pleasure having you
here. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get to the Root podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who might benefit, and leave us a review. For more resources and to connect with us, visit rootfunctionalmedicine.com. Remember, your health journey starts with understanding the root cause. Join us next time.